just by themselves, and they're profitable. You won't misunderstand. Now that has to be qualified, because actually, as we're going to see, really you do need to read the Proverbs in light of the entire book and in light of the entire Bible. And in fact, the Proverbs themselves signal this to us. The Proverbs themselves guide us in how to read them. But there is a real sense in which these are meant to be bite-sized pieces, right? It's not a meal the way Colossians, like if you ask Paul, like, where should I stop reading in Colossians and like get the point, he'd be like, you have to read the whole thing. You have to read the whole thing. Like maybe he'd say, like, there's a break here, there's a break. He's like, but by and large, you have to read the whole thing. Like, you can grab a single verse of Proverbs if you're grabbing from the actual sections that contain Proverbs and read them profitably. All right. Questions up to this point. Again, you can stop me at any point and make me go backwards, right? So we've got these various collections. They're not all the same size either. Some of these are much shorter than the others. You can see even just by our chapter notation. And there is some micro-organization, right? There are times where you see, okay, it seems like similar proverbs are grouped together. However, the book is clearly not organized thematically, right? You do get micro-organization, like in Proverbs 11, 16 through 18, you get these three proverbs together. A gracious woman gets honor, violent men get riches. A man who is kind benefits himself, but a cruel man hurts himself. The wicked earn deceptive wages, but one who sows righteousness gets a sure reward. And so there is some thematic similarity, like you can see why they kind of fit together and why they work together. But the book is not organized thematically. In fact, sometimes it's frustrating for readers, because like if you want to know like everything the book of Proverbs has to say about money, that's a lot of work, right? You have to go through. I did this once for the youth retreat at our old church. If you want to know everything that the Proverbs has to say about money, you've got to grab yourself a highlighter, maybe pick green for money or something, and you have to go through the book and be like, green, 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 green. And you just have to work your way through the entire book. And then if you want to know everything it has to say about parenting, pick another color. Red for you're in trouble, and then you have to do the same thing, and you have to go all the way through the entire book. And so yes, sometimes you will see little clusters, but it's spread out. It's spread out through the entire book. Money, parenting, there's all sorts of topics, laziness, wise use of time, importance of instruction, all these things. They are not clumped together in coherent, like organized thematic collections. They're spread out. And so that influences how you approach the book, how you think about it, how you go about reading it. I actually want you to flip there, right? Flip to the opening of Proverbs. We're going to look at Proverbs, there's this kind of opening little prologue at the start of the book. So that first big collection at the start of the book is a series of poems, and it starts with not quite a poem, but verses 1 through 7 is a little prologue to the entire book that then follows with your series of poems. Oh, I didn't say anything about authorship or date. I guess I'll say that real quick while you're flipping there and in there. So we know a huge amount of who wrote the book or who these collections are attributed to. A large chunk of the book is attributed to Solomon. Some of this work is attributed to Hezekiah's men, at least in terms of collecting and organizing. We have no idea who Lemuel is. We have no idea who Agur is. But we get these sayings that are attributed to them and that have been collected and given to us as a book when we're pretty fuzzy on that too, right? Obviously it has to be after all of these people when we get a collection. But this is another example for us. The book of Proverbs is another concrete example where we have both inspiration of an individual text, but we also have a collection and an organization process. And we recognize that this too is inspired. The fact that we are given this as a book says something. The fact that we don't just have these disparate pieces that survive, but that they have been gathered together and put into this form, put into this collection, put into this book, there is meaning there and intent for us there. Sometimes it's difficult, but we have to work through it. one of the things we're going to see is that the Proverbs are inherently, I got to think of a good word. Does anyone know what epigrammatic means? All right, then I need a better word. The Proverbs are inherently incomplete, like by design. Like every individual proverb is it's designed like a Lego piece. Like if you buy a single Lego, and you'd be like, "Yay, I've got a Lego." It's like, but that Lego has teeth at the top, and it has holes in the bottom. By its very design, that piece begs to be put together with other pieces. Like its existence in and of itself tells you there are other Legos. Like if you had never seen a Lego in your entire life, and you were on a beach and you found a single Lego, if you studied and thought carefully, and like this would require a lot of thought, but you're measuring and you're seeing the circles and you're measuring the design, like it would lead you to understanding. Just by looking at that single Lego itself, there must be other Legos. I've never seen them, but there must be other Legos. In the same way, the Proverbs encourage you, the individual Proverbs encourage you to understand you can't read this by itself. This little piece is only a piece. It is designed to be paired with something else. You have this most clearly in the case of Proverbs that are what seem to be inherently contradictory, right? What's the most famous? What's the most famous example? Because sometimes they're spread out in the book, but the most famous example is right next to each other. They're right next to each other in the book. Yes. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes. And then the next proverb is, don't answer, or which it goes the other way. The first proverb is, don't answer a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him. And then the very next proverb is, answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes. Wait, which is it? Don't answer a fool or answer a fool? And so the kind of simplistic reading is, look at this contradiction in the Bible. But when we actually think about it, it's like, yeah, but the author put those there, right? He's not dumb. The author put those there, and he put them next to each other, meaning there's a point here. There is a point in the fact that you are supposed to compare these two statements. You are supposed to think through this juxtaposition. You are supposed to understand that one by itself doesn't tell the whole story. The second one is equally necessary to understand the entire point. And so even though the Proverbs in one sense stand on their own, their very design and nature lets you know that they don't tell you the whole story. Every individual proverb doesn't tell you the whole story. Because there's going to be so many times you read the Proverbs and you feel like, that's not true. You're gonna read the Proverbs and be like, oh, hard work leads to success. And it's like, but I'm working hard and I'm not very successful. Or I know lots of people who just crash and burn. Like, why? This doesn't seem to play out. And we'll talk a little bit more about it next week. Or there's lots of Proverbs you read and it's so obvious that it borders on the point of, like, you think, why do you even say this? Like, you don't even need to say this out loud. Like, I have at least some examples of this, right? In Psalm or in Proverbs, you have proverbs like a false witness breathes out lies and a truthful witness, is sure. And it's like, yes, a false witness lies. The truthful witness tells the truth. That's just kind of like the definition of a false witness and a true witness. Why are you saying that? Or, you have multiple proverbs about, like, if you hire a lazy person, it will be frustrating to you. It's like, okay, yes, I agree. If you're like, there's smoke in your eye. Like, this says it poetically. It says it, punchy. But it's like, yeah, but why you say that, right? Look at least one. Let's see, Proverbs. I just wrote the notation. Let's see what I wrote for Proverbs 18:18. Oh yeah, a lot puts an end to quarrels and decides between powerful contenders. Like, yeah, if you roll the dice, it works. Like, okay, we don't know what to do. Let's flip a coin. We'll go heads, we go to this restaurant. Tails, we go to that restaurant. Yeah, that works. But why, so much of it seems like we don't need to know this, or what's going on, what's the point? And what you come to find as you read through the Proverbs is that, these are designed for you to put them together in pieces, and these are designed for you to compare, contrast, and these are designed for you to dig deeper and to plumb into. So anyway, that said, back to Proverbs chapter 1. Verses 1 through 7. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. To know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight, to receive instruction in wise dealing, in righteousness, justice, and equity, to give prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the youth. Let the wise hear and increase in learning, and the one who understands obtain guidance. To understand a proverb and a saying, the words of the wise and their riddles. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. So this is given, it's not quite a poem. It's, in fact, grammatically, for our teachers and our homeschoolers, grammatically, this sounds very awkward, and it should sound very awkward. It's not quite a poem. It introduces the entire book, and there's a repetition, right? So, what is the repetition in verses 1 through 7? Structurally, what is happening? What's our repetition? You don't have to use any particular word. Just observe it and describe it to me. What is our structural repetition in verses 1 through 7? You can, right? I heard the word to, right? To know, to understand, to receive instruction, to give prudence, to understand. A proverb and the saying. All right, so grammatically, these are infinitives. Who cares? But we use these, among other things, to indicate or to convey purpose, right? So if you say, I went to the store to buy groceries for dinner, right? The to buy groceries, that's the purpose of the previous action. I went to the store. Or I taught my kids math to make sure they get into college, right? Like you often convey purpose with these to types of statements, right? To do this. So what's weird about verses 1 through 7? What's awkward, even grammatically speaking?
Well, I think our mind takes the verse 1 and puts it in front of each one, even though we don't say it. I think that's what's happening.
Yeah. You maybe even don't recognize, but you don't say that. You can't do that by itself. You can't say to buy groceries for dinner. If you just say to buy groceries for, that sounds weird, right? You have to have a previous statement that then is, grammatically, infinitives aren't complete sentences. They can't stand by themselves. They're incomplete. And yet here it goes to know wisdom, to understand words of insight, to receive instruction, to give prudence, to understand what to do this. These are all incomplete sentences. Grammatically, the way we say it is there's no verb. You need a previous verb, you need a previous action, you need a previous statement that then results in these things. So what is it? Why this kind of, what is grammatically awkward, what is incomplete, what is not proper speaking? Why this and it's the same way in Hebrew. At the beginning of the book, it sounds weird. It sounds incomplete. It stands strangely. Was that a hand?
Yeah, it goes right to the top. Proverbs of Solomon, David. And then you got to put together in your head first, and it's to know wisdom and instruction. You go back to that first statement. I think you just kind of put it together.
Yeah, you are. You're supposed to, and I think a lot of us kind of naturally do. You're supposed to put this together. So then, what is the implicit logic of this opening introduction to the book? What is implicitly it telling you? It's telling you the purpose of what? If these are purpose statements, they are the purpose of what? They're the purpose of the whole book. They're the purpose of the whole book. They're the purpose of the Proverbs. They're the purpose of the entire book. You're reading this entire book in order to know wisdom and instruction. You're reading this entire book in order to understand words of insight. You're reading this entire book to give prudence to the simple, to give To understand a proverb and a saying, the words of the wise and their riddles. Even then, in kind of the descriptions we get, we are introduced to the fact that we're being given this big collection, and it is not any individual piece that is being given so that we just get a little bit more knowledge, but rather this entire collection is given to us such that we will be able to gain more. We'll be able to comprehend. We'll be able to, like he says, understand a proverb and a saying, right? The words of the wise and the riddles. We understand that many proverbs, like by themselves, you read it and you're like, I don't know what that means. Because that's a whole other thing. I didn't even mention that. But there's a ton of proverbs you read just by itself and you're like, I have no idea. Like maybe I'm missing something. There's a cultural divide, or like what's going on? And yes, there probably is some of that. But spoiler alert. There were many proverbs that the average ancient Israelite would have also read and be like, I have no idea. What does that mean? What's the point? That's intentional. You're supposed to have to go, okay, now I need to start building, like you grab a random Lego piece and you're like, what? Some of them, they're rectangles, they're squares, like that makes sense. Like, that could do all sorts of things. And then some of your Lego pieces are all sorts of weird shapes. And if you don't have the rest of the set, you have no idea what this one random weird piece that they printed is for. And so the book does that intentionally. So you've got this purpose statement for the entire book, this purpose statement for reading and engaging. To know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight. So we have all these, we have these parallel purpose statements, and then we have all these different words, right? Wisdom, instruction, words of insight, prudence, knowledge, discretion. Let's pick just the kind of big one, right? The one we often associate with Proverbs, the one we associate with the rest of this literature. Wisdom literature. What does it mean? What does wisdom mean? What does it mean to be wise? When the author of Proverbs or the collector of Proverbs, Solomon in many of his Proverbs uses the word wise, right? And when we have right here at the beginning, the purpose of this book is to know wisdom. Okay, what does that mean? What does it mean to be wise? I'm going to erase this now. What is, because this is going to be huge for the book, for understanding what we're operating with as we come to this book. What is wisdom? Someone give me a definition of wisdom. And we'll relate it. We won't do all of these things, but we'll kind of keep in mind these other words he's got. Knowledge, prudence.
Yeah, one in the back.
Oh, one in the back. Insight, all these other things. Yes, give me a definition.
Wisdom cries aloud in the street.
Oh, okay. So we have a description. We have a description from later in the book. Wisdom cries aloud in the streets. So we have something wisdom does, personified in chapter 8, wisdom is personified a lot in the book. I'll say, I saw Deseret's hand first.
I heard a pastor once say, wisdom teaches knowledge how to behave.
Oh, okay. Let's say that right now. Wisdom teaches knowledge how to behave. Lexi, you had a...
knowing what to say, what rightly to do or say.
Okay. Knowing
What's fitting.
what is fitting. We'll say that. Knowing what is fitting, I assume, to a situation. In both of these, we have both of your definitions. We are hitting this again. And there's a little bit of probably prudence here in that definition. Another definition. Leanne.
Application
Application of what?
of wisdom.
No, that's cheating. No using the word. No using the same word. Give me application of something else. Application of knowledge I heard first, so we'll go with that.
Yeah.
That's a common one I've heard. It's a good definition. Wisdom is knowledge applied, right?
It's within a certain culture, your culture, or whatever your background, understand.
Yeah, there is so each of these definitions we're kind of hitting on again, knowledge. So now give me a definition of knowledge. We got this cluster of terms. Okay, so if I want to understand wisdom, it looks like I have to understand knowledge, and I have to be able to make some sort of distinction between the two. So what is knowledge?
Learn information.
Yeah, information that you have. Learned information, right? It's really hard to define knowledge without using the word know. Like, stuff you know. It's like, yeah, but that's just the word again. You've just repeated the word. Like, what is knowledge? Yeah. There's information, there are propositions, there are truths, there are things that are reality that exists outside yourself that you are able to comprehend, that you are able to recall, that you have some measure of understanding of, that not just, we also kind of distinguish between, knowledge and understanding sometimes. I don't necessarily think in any of these terms the biblical author is making such a fine distinction, but we will often distinguish between you can get a child to repeat 2 + 2 = 4, and not like they can repeat it, but they have no concept. What is 2? What is 4? What is plus? So you can know something and you can understand it, but usually when we mean knowledge, when we're thinking of knowledge here, we're kind of bundling understanding together, right? So there's information, you can repeat it, but you have some comprehension of it. You understand it. But then wisdom is yet still different. We make a distinction because you can have knowledge. You can, let's take an example from a trade. So you can know all about electricity. You can know how to make circuits. You can know how not to get shocked, and you can know about grounding, and you can know how not to die when you're working with wires and power. You can understand all that, and then maybe you can even know the math, right? You can know the math and the physics and all the stuff. Like, I can't even give you examples because I don't know that. I don't know any of it. But there's lots to know. There's lots that you can learn in the classroom about electricity, and then even specifically about wires and wiring and power and stuff. But even with all that, there is something more that is required if you come to a room and you're like, okay, how are we going to wire this to be functional, right? Like, what are we going to do with all of my knowledge? How am I going to apply it? How am I actually going to use it? How am I going to put it to use? And that's where we kind of like, okay, that's going to take some wisdom. That's going to take some know-how, not just of a subject, but some know-how of how to put that subject to use. Knowledge applied. Know what's fit into a situation. Teaching knowledge how to behave. Like, how do we actually take that knowledge and do something with it? Because you can take knowledge, we can see. Like, you could be like, oh, really, really knowledgeable and be unwise. You can say, the classic example is take the fashion designer, take the person who understands proportion and color and shape, and then his wife says, how do I look? And he says, well, that really makes your thigh look ugly, and this does this, and like these colors clash, and it's like he's saying a bunch of true things, but he's not maybe very wise in the moment, right? Like, so we understand, we make this distinction. And so Proverbs, the entire point of Proverbs is both to give knowledge, right? There's knowledge to be given, but a lot of it, as we're going to see, as we've already seen, is stuff that basically everyone knows. Stuff that basically everyone knows. But now the question is, what do we do with that? What do we do with that? So Proverbs goes one more. The book of Proverbs is not just for you to know certain facts about how the world operates. There's a lot in there. There is lots in there that isn't intuitive, as we're going to see. There's lots in there that you would never come to on your own. And the book is, as a whole, is helping you to not just get those pieces of information, but what do you do with them? What do you do with this information? How do you go about actually applying it? And so that's the point of the entire book. It's to know wisdom and instruction. It's to understand words of insight. To receive instruction in wise dealing, in righteousness, justice, and equity. It's to help the simple, to give them prudence, right? There's an element in that word of to know when not to, right? To know when not to know how to show restraint, to know when to hold back. And the one who understands guidance, to be able to unpack, right? Part of the point of the book is for you to be able to take these individual sayings that maybe by themselves are very, very opaque and very, very difficult to understand, and the fact that they're given to you in this book form is going to help you understand them, right? Each individual proverb, if you heard it by yourself on the street, you might go, I don't know what to do with that. And I say, no, but the point of the book as a whole is so that you do know what to do with it. In the juxtapositions, in the being put together, it helps you know, what do I do with this proverb? Yes?
Yeah, it looks like not only just shows you the good and positive consequences of the different actions that we're doing.
Yeah, you're going to get a lot that, as Gordon say, deal with, right, consequences. Good and bad, right? Reward and consequences. A lot kind of with that negative, like here's a consequence to an action, and here's a reward. And how you're supposed to think, particularly in light of the consequences and the rewards that these proverbs promise, the shape of the entire book is going to help you navigate, right? The shape of the entire book is going to help you navigate how to understand any one given promise or any one given threatened consequence. We also have, we have enough time, right at the beginning here, this statement, and we're given different versions of this throughout the book. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Or the fear of the Lord, later in the book, is the beginning of wisdom, right? So you're not supposed to sharply make a distinction between the two. The fear of the Lord is the beginning, right? So right here at the beginning, we're told in this book, and this is going to become key. We're going to consider this next week, because what we're going to look at next week is the common picture of the book of Proverbs. There are kind of four things that are commonly thought about the entire book and that kind of form this common way of approaching the book that I think are all slightly off. So next week, we're going to look at a common picture of Proverbs, four aspects of that, and then we're going to correct each of those four. And very key to that correction is the way that the book of Proverbs starts here. We're told the purpose of the entire book, and we're told that right at the beginning, that the fear of the Lord, right? If the entire book is to give us wisdom, the entire book the point is to give us knowledge, the entire book is supposed to help us deal wisely in various situations, the entire book is supposed to help us be prudent, to know when to hold back, and know how to actually just take the knowledge that we have and live in the world, right? That's, that kind of, that word I used earlier, earthiness, right? Like it's very practical. Proverbs is very practical. Like sometimes you read portions of scripture and you're like, you don't know what to do. You almost always know what to do after reading Proverbs. Like, it's like, I know what I'm supposed to do today. I know what I'm supposed to do with that. Like, it's practical. So if the entire book is meant to give this kind of very practical, easy is not the right word, but easy to understand application. Simple, but not easy. These simple applications, if that's the entire book, what then here at the beginning, where the author chooses, the redactor, the one who's gathered this together, chooses to say that right at the beginning is the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord. What is maybe particularly, this is such a famous statement. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, that we don't slow down. But what kind of strikes you about that saying? The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. What might you point out if you're going to be teaching on the significance of this? What ought you notice? What do you notice? Yes, Leanne.
So the practical application of knowledge is what Jesus would do, or what Jesus would want you to do.
And so why specifically, I agree, why specifically did that come to mind right now?
Like the brain is an organizing machine. So when we read through the Proverbs and keep the Lord and all that we learn from Him and make connections.
Yeah, there is a, I'll say this next week. I'll unpack this a little bit next week. But Proverbs is theological. And for us, we understand that always means ultimately Christological. And for us, sometimes this might seem like a statement that's so obvious. Proverbs is theological. But for many people, they come to it and it's like, this is just kind of mundane, right? This is just like ordinary. It's not. There is something very, very deeply theological about the entire book. Yeah, Gordon.
In order to fear the Lord, you have to accept that there is no Lord.
Right? In order to fear, so let's right away start by, in order to fear the Lord, you have to recognize and acknowledge the Lord. So right at the beginning of the book, Proverbs is making a very profound point that the type of knowledge this book is interested in, however mundane or however just kind of ordinary the information it gives is, right? We're already being given an important context. When you read, like, hiring a lazy person is annoying, and you go like, yeah, that seems like everybody knows, that seems obvious. And then when you read that, you're already being told right now a particular context in which you are to understand that statement, and in which it's actually impossible to understand that statement, which is the fear of the Lord. Meaning, if you just read that and you don't put it in context of the fear of the Lord, you don't yet get what the author and the redactor and the collector of Proverbs is wanting you to get from it. You haven't quite yet understood it. We'll talk about this more next week, but given this context that you must, all of the knowledge contained in this book is not just, common wisdom. It's not just common sense. It requires as its starting point the fear of the Lord. What else particularly about that phrase maybe stands out?
I do think wisdom also has like an element of time because it's not applied over like a long duration of time.
Yeah, so there is for something to be wise, how can we say this? There is it kind of has to play out, doesn't it, right?
I mean, you know, like a child's brain, like they're not necessarily, the child isn't really wise yet until they've applied the knowledge.
Yeah, so there's both time to gain, but then there's also a sense in where it has to show itself over time. What else? What else when we think of particularly the fact that we're told that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom? So we recognize there's the Lord. What else?
That you can't have wisdom unless you fear it.
Yes, you can't, the wisdom that the book of Proverbs is interested in, you cannot have absent this one thing, fear of the Lord. I think also just the fact that it's the word choice fear. I think that's very interesting, right? It's so famous to us that maybe we don't even stop to say it. But you could have put any number of other things there that would have theoretically made sense or theoretically be equally theologically true, right? You could say the love of the Lord, right? The love of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge and wisdom. You could say, the faith in the Lord. Faith in the Lord is the beginning of knowledge and wisdom. But he doesn't. He says the fear of the Lord. And it's very clearly, there is an underline put there because this is the repetition, right? We get this statement again. The fear of the Lord in variation, right? The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So there's something that the author is doing that is underlying this aspect of fear. Also, especially if you've been reading the wisdom literature lately, you'll notice that use of the Lord kind of stands out too. So remind me, we've said this many times in recent history, when you see Lord in all caps, what does that mean? Yahweh, God's personal name. That is our English language convention for avoiding saying his name. We print Lord in all caps. And so when you see the Lord, right? So what is particularly special about Yahweh? What is particularly special about Lord in all caps? What is that name?
He's with us.
Well, yes, he is, right? And he is with us. And so that name is, I'm thinking of well, yes. So I'm saying not what the name communicates, but what is it? Well, why do we have that name?
It's his covenant name.
Right, it's his covenant name. This is the name he gave when he makes covenant with the people. This is his name, his personal name, where he says, you will know me by this name. Right? We have all sorts of generic names for God. God, right? Operating in English, God Almighty. Things like this, where it's just like, these are generic descriptions. These are generic words. God is a word. Another way to say it is God is a word. Yahweh is a name. Right? So we have all sorts of words for God, but we also have names, and we have in particular his covenant name, his personal name. He says, this is my name, this is my personal name, which he gives in the context of taking a people to himself. One of the things that people point out about Proverbs, as we'll see next week, is, hey, there's none of like the big things, right? There's no Exodus. There's no mention of Abraham. There's no mention of the patriarchs, right? There's no mention of Moses. There's no mention of any of the big events, right? The Psalms so often are looking back to this. The prophets are so often looking back and citing these things, and none of it is ever brought up in Proverbs. And so sometimes Proverbs is described as non-theological. It's like, this is just kind of like common sense. But no. Right at the beginning, it says the fear of the Lord. The fear of the God in covenant, right? That name always conveys a personal, intimate relationship that God has made. It always conveys a whole lot of history, doesn't it? Just in the use of the name, right? Actually, if you look at Job, if you look at Ecclesiastes, the Lord's covenant name is almost entirely absent. It is mostly just God. We're thinking in terms of God and God Almighty. But here at Proverbs, it's like, no, we're going to use, more often than not, God's personal covenant name. And we're going to start the book by saying it is the fear of Yahweh that is the beginning of knowledge, right? So already it is an understanding that there is an entire prehistory, there is an entire history that the people have, there's an entire history that you have as a part of the people with God, and there is no real wisdom, at least in Proverbs sense. There is no real understanding absent this relationship, absent this closeness, absent this type of knowledge of God, and particularly when it comes to fear. But we'll unpack a little bit more of that next week. Any final questions for today? Right? So we've barely scratched the surface. So next week, we're going to kind of summarize the theology of Proverbs as a whole. So if you're still like, oh man, okay, what do I do with this book? Next week is our summary of the theology as a whole. But any final questions on anything we talked about today? All right, let me close in prayer. Lord, we do thank you so much for your word. We thank you for not leaving us alone. We thank you that you have gifted us ways to know wisdom, that we might be wise. And so we do ask that you would ultimately instill in each of us a fear of you, a knowledge of you, and an intimacy with you, which we know to be necessary for real wisdom. Grant each of us to be wise, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, you are pseudo-dismissed.